at the edge of the table because I can't sit behind it because of my belly. Just kidding, just kidding. And I'm going to sit holding the mic. You can hear me, right? It's very weird to talk into it like this. So I'm excited to be here. It's so nice to be in the CLPP space and to talk reproductive justice and all the other related movements for social justice that are here. It really grounds me and I feel so much more rejuvenated. So when I go back home to an organization that's in the middle of a move, a gala, funding crises and everything else, I'll be like, but there's hope, we can do good work. And that was really brought home to me at the strategic action session, which I anchored, which Mia kind of sort of asked me to do. It was more like, you will, right? I'm gonna ask you, but you will. I want to give a shout out to the participants there. Emily, Jose, Ashi, Elby, Anushka, Sophia, Ashley, Faye, Brittany, Kate, Trey, Danielle, Anne, Emily, Gina, Shabana, Eric, Beth, Sarah, and Sasha. Because they represented healing modalities in terms of touch, journalism and media, social and environmental justice. There were a lot of people who were working on sexual violence and sexual assault, women's health. There were indigenous representatives there, people working on intimate partner violence, faith, and just international issues even. So it was a really good cohort of people who were working on anti-violence issues, but coming from different perspectives. And the whole point of these strategic action sessions is, and I forgot to put on my timer, so I'm gonna go over. Here we go. Was to actually, I was just facilitating. It was not about me talking about anything, but just to guide a conversation about what does it take to build a more holistic, more intersectional, more responsive anti-violence movement than what exists. Because what exists leaves out a lot of our voices. Anyone working with a marginalized population, anyone working with a community that is not just mainstream status quo has privilege, the structures of responses and the voices that you hear the most of don't really reflect us. And so I didn't want the space of the strategic action session to at all include that kind of perspective. So it was hard at first. I don't know if people who were at the session felt that too, but it was like, oh, hopefully people will speak. But then it just happened. It just was amazing. And what it wasn't necessarily, and I think other speakers will echo this, it wasn't really about like, oh, let's vision, let's plan. It was literally, I'm going through this, who here can help me? And it was someone working on in a women's health clinic, talking to someone with a rape crisis center in a college. It was someone from the international, like asking more policy issues, asking someone doing really direct service. So that's the bridge building, right? That's the movement building that happens. And it's not something you plan, it happens organically when you have people in the room together talking about what they need and what the communities they work for need and how we can respond. And no one was talking from, oh, well, my professional job says this, and so my response was only going to be this. It is, I've worked outside the box here and there. I've organized, you know, underground activities. I also know the issues of when your funding and your safety and your, let's say, you know, your well-being could be compromised by taking a certain stance. How do we work in that and make sure that we can be safe as we do this work? And there was one person, who was the one that was, oh gosh, I can't remember. The high school student, are you here? Are you still here? You know who you are? No one, not claiming it? All right. There was someone who was a senior in high school in New York City, and when we were going around introducing ourselves, the framing was, you know, I'm an activist kind of thing. And she's like, well, I'm a baby activist. I'm not really an activist yet. I'm like, oh, we all have activism in different ways, but what she said was the most powerful thing, in that she's doing a lot of work in her school to have people understand that whatever happened to Trayvon Martin is what could happen to them, to not otherize his experience into you, because a lot of kids either were like, well, that's not us, or other kids were like, well, that happens to me all the time, like the violence got normalized. And so her struggle was like, we can't other, you have to identify. And so seeing yourself in the other and claiming that other as yourself is the movement that we want to see, reflecting ourselves in all the people that we work with, that we represent, that we hold in ourselves as one. And she said that, and it was like, ah, done. End of story, done. Our job here is done. Because that's what it is. It's recognizing the other in you, in your work, and recognizing who's not in the room and whose voices you're not hearing, and how sometimes when you think you're trying to make an open space, if you're not as inclusive as you try to be, that presents barriers. And so sometimes the silence as a barrier, or the not knowing as a barrier. And so the challenge that requires us to build knowledge and be open and engage in others, not as others, but as ourselves. So that was my strategic action session, and it was amazing, and I felt really honored to have anchored it. In that I don't really feel I was an anchor. I feel like I was just kind of a stimulator of discussion, and then it went on its own. And there's amazing advocacy going around from the youth level to the most institutionalized ones of us that have been maybe 30 years in our career. So this is the thing I value most about CLPP. It's the fact that there's this vibrant youth movement and people working both inside and outside systems to achieve change. And sometimes I lose sight of that given my institutional status, right, as an executive director of an organization that needs to worry about fundraising and staff salaries and healthcare and all that kind of stuff. That why am I doing this? Why did I first come into this? It's for this. It's for the space to sit in the space in between all of us and see what the larger good is that we're working for. So that was the strategic action session that I anchored in a microcosm, and I'm not sure if I should say anything else, but I guess I will segue to the next speaker. Okay, thank you everyone, thanks.